Hello, my name's Ria Bales. I am the Managing Director of Bales Partners Consulting, and I'm delighted to be here today with Jenny Brown. Now, Jenny is coach, trainer, facilitator, consultant, all things, and specialises in governance, but in its most broadest, wonderful sense. So, really delighted to have you with us, Jenny.
Thanks, Ria. Lovely to see you.
So, Jenny, we were going to have just a chat, weren't we, around the relationship between leadership and, well, I guess just what the individual gets out of that, weren't we? Because I think that quite often when you look up at top leaders and some of those kind of the chief executives and those people at the top, they seem kind of all powerful, don't they? They seem all knowing, they're able to make a decision at the kind of the drop of a hat, winners in this kind of game of success.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, reality is most likely to be that they're exhausted and that they are tired of just the never-ending emails. They're tired of the rat race, the pressure, the demands. They're being pulled in all different types of directions. And I think kind of with greater and greater pressures on them at the moment, employee engagement, you've got to motivate, you've got to achieve results. And it isn't all this kind of rosy picture that people are kind of scrambling to get towards, is it? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think, a lot of us start our careers and kind of, for a lot of us, we have this intention of kind of making it to the top of the tree, whatever that might be and whatever it might look like. And actually, when you look at what those top roles are, a lot of the time, they might be quite far removed from some of the things that we were actually really passionate about to start off with. I think the classic example that always strikes me is head teachers and principals of schools where, someone's got into it because they love educating, they love that connection with students. And actually, the thing is, the more seniority you get in teaching, the less time you actually spend engaging with the students. You actually end up in charge of a multi-million-pound budget, and you've got to do people management and all of these different sorts of things, kind of manage loads of different stakeholders. And for some people that's fantastic and it does tick their boxes, but for other people they just become further removed from the thing that got them there in the first place. And I think that can be a really big issue. I think the other thing that happens as well is, there's you kind of get the little violin out, but it is quite lonely at the top as well. Yeah. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, particularly when they're kind of looking at moving into that sort of C-suite exec space, what they forget is that very few people are going to actually give you any compliments once you're in that place. So you might get like a little pat on the back because you've pulled off a big project, but the idea of other people feeling that they need to coach you in that role, develop you, give you positive messages to help you move forward, a lot of that falls away. And some people can cope with that. Some people can kind of get a really good validation from what they see they've achieved. But what I notice in a lot of my work, and I kind of see this through my own lens as well, is that some of us kind of need a lot of that validation. Some of us actually need somebody to sometimes say to us, do you know what? You're doing a really good job. And moreover, here are the things that you are really good at. And what you find is the kind of more senior you get, you just get the problems. You get and also you have to give other people the credit for all these things as well. Do you know? And it's right. That's how we create legacy, and that's what makes people great leaders. But I think what sometimes we can kind of lose contact with as leaders is how we top up our own bucket of validation as well. We can spend so much time motivating our team that we sort of lose touch with what we're looking for ourselves. And there's these two things that come to my mind. It comes up in coaching so much with people that I talk to. The first one is this concept of the hedonic treadmill. And the hedonic treadmill says to us that fundamentally, trauma and whatever else aside, we pretty much have a baseline happiness level as human beings, and our baseline level is based on all sorts of different life factors. But the thing is that a pay rise, a bonus, gives a little blip, and then pretty much will follow back to the same happiness. And the same thing happens with sadness as well. So aside from like PTSD and things like that, we kind of we balance out a particular place. But what I've observed in a lot of people, and I have to say I've observed it in myself as well, is that you kind of like that you need bigger and bigger hits. It's like being a sort of a drug addict for achievement or salary or whatever it is. Yeah. You need a bigger and a bigger hit each time to feel like you've achieved something. The second thing that always comes into my mind is Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads. So, I know there's loads of mythology about it, that it's about yuppies and things like that. But like, if you listen to David Byrne, he's like, no, it's this fact that we sleepwalk through life, we kind of head towards this thing, and it's like, how did I get here? Well, where where is my car? Where is my beautiful wife? Where is my house? Where are all these things? And actually, what it's kind of saying is, it's like we're just drifting towards materiality and trophyism, and we're not thinking about the decisions we make. And I'm not saying that every executive or leader out there is at this place, but I think a lot of people get there.
Yeah, absolutely. On that recognition piece, the kind of the actually you're doing a really good job. I mean, that's just human nature, isn't it? It is just nice to have some of that really positive feedback, and you're slogging your guts out and you are under so much pressure and you're constantly on this kind of treadmill, as you say. And it is just nice to be able to receive some of that positive feedback once in a while. And I think it kind of sometimes we look at these leaders and they're almost superhuman. And I think it's really important to remember, both as looking towards leaders and being leaders ourselves, that we are just human, actually. Yeah. And that it is nice to have that value and that recognition. But I think it's really important to kind of bring people back to the connection with other human beings. You need to be able to connect with your workforce, don't you? And make sure that you remain relevant, I think, and that you're not sat way behind in this kind of some ivory tower, and that you've been kind of disconnected. But the other point that you just talked about there, this kind of almost addiction to more success, whatever we define success as. And I guess it just struck me, Jenny, that maybe what we're doing by that is the next fix and the next promotion and the next pay rise. What we're blind to is the compromise that we are making when we accept that. So we need more because we're compromising on some of the fundamentals, and some of that fundamentals might be time, quality of time that you say. So I need more holiday because I don't have time and I'm so pressured here. Well, I need more money then to be able to go onto the holiday. And you get into this cycle, don't you?
Exactly. And I think you also see it, and I have to say I've kind of experienced this myself, and I've seen lots of my friends experience this. It's like, it's why spa days are so popular. Everybody was feeling stressed in lockdown, and still are. There was also that sense that maybe we were thinking more about how we connected with people, and we put in more effort into that, and we were appreciating the small things, so the little things so suddenly just became much more important, rather than the kind of the materialistic stuff. So I think, as exactly as you say, I think we did come to really value connection. We really started to see that actually this is what we're missing. A lot of the time we start to feel trapped in that cycle of achievement. Well, who am I? Who am I if I've not got the big job title? Who am I if I don't have the really fancy salary? How do I maintain my life if I don't have that salary? And I think that's the piece. It's like you can still make those decisions, but be really aware that you're making them as decisions and choices.
Yeah, and I guess that comes to, doesn't it, about how we measure our own success. If we didn't have the job titles, if we didn't have the salaries, what is the kind of the measuring stick as to what we measure ourselves internally against for kind of our sense of achievements and things? I've read this great book, Frederick Laloux, on reinventing organizations.
Love it.
And and it really kind of resonates with me, I think, where he's kind of talking about workplaces evolve in these kind of sudden leaps. Humankind has, but kind of certainly workplaces does. And you've gone through that kind of command and control, the observance of hierarchical structure, this kind of meritocracy promise. If you work harder, you will get better, you will have more success, through to probably more recently the values driven culture first type models, and he's making a really good argument saying actually all of that is pretty much, we're kind of growing out of it. And we're waiting for this next leap, and we don't know what that is going to be quite yet, but we're in that transitionary period of doing that. And that feels about right to me. I think with the kind of the onset of social media, with new generations and just such different expectations coming into the workplace, it feels to me as though we are being driven towards this next leap, whatever that might look like.
What you just described there, I think, Ria, is an evolutionary process. Mm-hmm. It's an evolutionary process, and working with lots of different types of organizations, you and I, and the way that we think and the sorts of things that we engage with, that whole culture of values driven, people first, all of that, it feels really natural to us. Yep. The thing is, there are loads of other organisations who are actually, to be fair, for all that everyone says they're not there, they are still command and control, or they are kind of really meritocracy based. And I think one of the challenges with the Frederick Laloux model is that what organisations like to do is like say, right, we need to, culture and values, we need to do this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the entire organisation from where it is over here, and we're going to start right over here, right? Yeah. We're not going to appreciate the fact that actually you can map on loads of really great leadership theory onto Frederick Laloux as well. So it's not only that you're thinking about the organisational factor, but you've got to get your leaders into being Absolutely. The right sorts of leaders as well. So your leaders need to have become, not expert leaders. They need to have evolved from being expert. They need to have moved into that place that is all about unleashing the potential of the people around them. And if we go back to that point I was just making about actually leaders, a lot of us, we just need validation. That is a huge step.
Things are changing. And I think it's really interesting to see younger generations now come into the workplace and the different expectations that they have just of the experience of work and of their direct line manager, but also kind of the leader right at the top of the organisation. And I think that typically is being characterised by action, most certainly, a demand for action rather than just intention. Intention just doesn't cut it. Mm-hmm. I think kind of nowadays there has to be action behind these rather than it's just empty words. And I think there's a bit about starting from almost a different values set. I don't go to work simply to earn money in order to be able to live my life over here. Work is part of my life, and therefore I will be much choosier about how I engage with it and what I want to do. But there's almost this there's a shift in the power balance of the employment relationship, I think.
I think absolutely. And I think that a lot of organisations totally haven't got this right yet. And I think there's more and more research showing that that people are burning out faster.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, going back to our original point with this hedonic treadmill, is that what starts to happen is people drift away from those lovely values that they started out with. They start to compensate with compensation. So they compensate for the fact they're moving away from their values, and suddenly they hit a point where they go, how did I get here? This isn't true to me. And do you know what? It's really not satisfying my soul. And actually, I'm not willing, if you look at, and I think one of the reasons maybe why it's particularly prevalent in the sort of the generations that are coming into the world of work now are, that idea of, buying your own house, that's not there. So the ability to have some of these materialistic things is diminished. But also, actually, we're starting to think, well, actually, are materialistic things the things that I want? So we're almost limiting our choices as well in terms of what does the compensation actually bring to us? So, what is the effect on climate change of the role that I'm undertaking? Yes. And all these things start playing in. And, I think that strength towards ethics, it's not, I think that we can simplify it and say, generations of value, younger generations are values led. They're not. They absolutely can be compensated. They absolutely will seek salary. And it's not to say that we should take advantage of that. But I think it's that they're more likely to quickly come back to that point. I think it's almost, that's what we're seeing. We're getting younger and younger at the point where we go, hang on, this isn't for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's happening.
And then I think if we flip that to some of these top leaders that are trying to be everything and now are feeling under pressure because they recognise that the younger generations of their workforce is expecting them to have an opinion on climate, is expecting them to have an opinion on BLM. Is expecting them to have an opinion on behalf of the organisation of everything that is happening in the world around them. And there's almost, you cannot be superhuman.
Well, if you look at all the research out of the various sort of forums and research bases, you know, like Harvard, McKinsey, all these sorts of different places. That's why so many of the skills that they're saying that we need to have in the future of work are so much less content driven, and so much more about things like agility, about resilience, about you know, about listening, about empathy, but also about being able to harness new ideas really effectively as well. And that's why that's what we need to look at in the future. I think the big question is whether we as individuals, organizations as groups of people, and organizations as sort of structures that have huge amounts of stakeholders, can we move at the pace that we need to? Can we bring those things on board? And you know, the pandemic has been absolutely atrocious in so many ways for so many people, and yet for those of us who kind of look at these sorts of theories and things and kind of engage in this research, actually it's been like one massive lab. You know, it's like been one massive experiment as to this is what the world of work of the future has been said to be coming on to be for ages. Right, here is the test case. What's worked, what hasn't. Absolutely. And, you know, kind of bringing it all back together at the end, what's the biggest thing that's come out of it is it's really easy for people to get totally lost and overwhelmed and stressed by it, because actually we haven't evolved as people enough to be able to pull that off.
Which is, I think, a fabulous place, Jenny, for us to leave it. It's been really fascinating, I think, to wander our way around such a broad topic and a broad area around this. And we could probably do a whole load of other series just on this topic. But it's been really, really brilliant. Thank you so much for spending some time with me on it.